The Von Erich family is considered to be one of the most important families in wrestling history, and some may say that they are the Kennedys of the sport. Their story is a cautionary tale about family, achieving success in wrestling, obsession, love, loss, unexpected tragedies, and breaking that cycle. Today I'm here to share with you all my movie review of the brand new A24 biographical drama by the name of The Iron Claw. I'm going to let y'all know by the end of this video if this film is any good and, more importantly, if it's worth checking out. So let's talk about it. Welcome back to my channel, and thanks for joining me today. Before I get into my review, let's start the conversation in the comments below. Was this a film you all had on your radar? And if you are a fan of wrestling, were you familiar with the story? But more importantly, once you've seen the film, make sure to share your thoughts about the writing, the performances, what worked, what didn't work. Let's have all those conversations in the comments below. So my personal relationship with wrestling dates back to me being a kid in the 90s and growing up what I consider to be one of the most entertaining eras of wrestling, which was the Attitude Era, and I was a pretty big fan of wrestling up into the late 2000s. I bring all that up to say, now I knew of the Von Erich family, but I wasn't all that familiar with all the details on their impact on the sport, but also I wasn't familiar with all the incredibly tragic events within the family's history, as they were known to have a family curse. The movie is written and directed by Sean Durkin, who I was very familiar with his work back in 2020 with The Nest. In that film, as well as The Iron Claw, he definitely has an interest in tackling family drama and family dynamics and seeing how family relationships can be affected by appearances, as well as the pressures of continuing legacy and having the pressures of being the best. And he does such a fantastic job of creating a very charming yet haunting and powerful film about this family. Now, as a fan of wrestling, I was so impressed by how they handled the wrestling elements of this movie and how the film showcases the showmanship of being a wrestler in the wrestling business, the behind the scenes of the ins and outs of building shows, going on the roads, the conversation between the wrestlers, working the mic, and even more impressed by the actual wrestling that was going on in this film. They did such a fantastic job of bringing that authenticity of recreating the more iconic matches and the different rivalries like the Freebird crew and Ric Flair. And all of the wrestling elements to me in this film was handled really well. And speaking of the wrestling elements, for those that aren't wrestling fans or familiar with the story, it's okay. You don't have to be a big fan. You don't have to be a fan at all, because I think the film does enough legwork to let people feel welcome to follow along what was going on. So I really much enjoyed that element. But speaking of elements that I enjoyed, switching over to the performances in this film, which I thought were just incredible by the entire cast. I thought that everyone felt like they were the true characters, or at least true to the story they were trying to tell in this narrative. I really enjoyed Maura Tierney and Holt McCallany as they were the parents in this film. Both had individual moments to shine, but Maura really plays into the mother with regrets in this film. She has moments when she knew she should have said something to her husband, who was pushing the boys way too hard to chase his dreams. In Holt, who plays the head of the family, he's the head of the Von Erichs. He is just very impressive in this film. Like, you hate this character. He plays the role of no excuses, a stone cold father who had his time in the sun, but wasn't able to really achieve the goals he wanted to in the wrestling industry and bringing that title home. So instead, he uses his boys to recreate his desires and really shape them to remove their emotions so that they can focus more on being the best and bringing that title home. So just great performances there. I really enjoyed Lily James, who honestly had a limited role in the film, but she made the most out of her limited time on screen. She was just so caring, so charming, and also a very supportive wife of Kevin. But speaking of those Von Erich boys and the performances, I thought they were just fantastic across the board. You have Harris Dickinson, who played David, Stanley Simmons, who played Mike, who was very kind, and he was just one of the most endearing characters and had one of the most heartbreaking moments in this film. But to me, the standouts were definitely everyone's favorite TV chef, Jeremy Allen White, as well as Zac Efron as Kevin. Now, Jeremy comes in about the halfway point through the movie, and he really adds another layer to the dynamic of this family and really showcases a lot of range in his role, but not only physically, but emotionally, as he really struggled with depression and he used drugs to get out of that. But unfortunately, that wasn't the answer, as he was just the favorite son and he had to live up to those expectations. But he missed out on so many different opportunities that we see in this movie, whether it was the situation that was going on with the Olympics being canceled. He had this bike situation that caused a very tragic accident. So I just really love what that character brought to this film, and I thought that Jeremy did a really great job and did a really fantastic emotional journey with this character. But the man of the hour is Zac Efron, who really carries a lot of the emotional baggage in this film. First off, the physicality, the transformation of Zac Efron in this film. He's always been someone that, from as far as I know, has always been in shape. Especially I know when he did like the films earlier in his career where he had to be shredded, like in Baywatch. But in this movie, this man looks like a tank. Like he looks like John Cena and He-Man had a child. Like physically, he looked like the part. He played the part not only from a acting standpoint, but physically he fit the role perfectly. Now, I was impressed by all of the actors when it came to the wrestling scenes, but Zac definitely had the most time in the ring, and you can tell that he did most of those stunts. So whether it was the physical performance that was just impressive, but I was just as impressed by the dramatic moments that he acted out so well. We see him as the older brother, one of the best for his brothers, and him wanting to be with them all the time, to him falling in love and having to protect his own family while balancing his father's demands and coming to terms with the past and breaking the family curse in that cycle. This is, in my personal humble opinion, I haven't seen all of Zac Efron's work. I've mostly seen like his comedic roles, his kind of love comedy roles, and then I saw him in that Ted Bundy movie. But to me, this is easily his best performance of his career. Also want to mention how the production of this film is fantastic, really embraces the late 70s into the 80s time period with the look and the feel, the awesome soundtrack. Also love the pacing within the earlier scenes in the first half of this film, which captures more of the fun side of the story and all the amount of comedy that was there. It's like a feeling of like nostalgia and happiness before all the tragedy takes place in the second and third half of this movie. Which, speaking of that second and third act of this film, I really enjoyed the themes of resilience and the love that we see that this family have for one another, because at the core of this movie, it's a family story. It's a very personal story that really kind of emphasizes the brotherhood and the love that they had for one another. The way the family drama played out shows the toxic relationship their father had and showing him pressuring them to strive for greatness, and those boys just wanted to make their father proud but also make a name for themselves within the wrestling industry, and how all that stuff really did clout their judgment. Now, one of the things that I thought was just really well done in this movie was how the film handles the physical and emotional toll that a wrestler can go through throughout their career, especially when it comes to the mental health of it all. And when the emotional impact happens in this film, you feel the weight. The weight is unbelievably raw, and you feel those tragedies within this film. Now, I was able, for the most part, like I felt the sadness, I felt the weight, but I was able to kind of keep myself together as far as like not tearing up or whatnot. But when we get into the back half of this film, there are two scenes that I think of right now that just kind of gets me emotional thinking about it, that just really broke me. Like I was literally tearing up because it really hits home. You feel the love that those brothers have for one another. It's a kind of a tribute scene, if you want to call it that I just thought was excellently done. But the film doesn't come without its flaws. Now, as biopics go, they have the unfortunate task of covering the main events of someone's life, and you only have so much time to tell all the main things that happen, and you can tell that there are several moments that felt like there was the fast forward button, like we kind of rushed through certain things that I thought should have been more fleshed out, and you lose some of the nuance and detail. Like we see these certain relationships, for example, Kevin and Pam, we see them dating to getting married to now having kids. There's a moment in the middle of the film where there's like this montage of showing their biggest matches or events that just feel like they were rushed past. So moments that feel like they happen quite quickly, like, oh man, like, okay, now they're addicted to drugs. When did that happen? Where did that character go through in these events? So there's like little nuanced moments that I wish were more fleshed out, but also kind of sticking to that theme of feeling like there was maybe missed opportunities and spending just a little bit more time on explaining, or better yet, showing how much time had had passed between these more tragic events. Like, we would go from one tragic event to the next, and like, what time, how much time, was it weeks, was it months, when these things happen? And again, you can look it up to obviously find out, but I wish the film would have had showed that. But also in that discussion there, we see their reactions to when the tragedy happened, but then we would cut to like the aftermath. And I just wish there was a little bit more time in those reactionary moments. Again, I understand that their dad had showed them or had raised them to not show emotions, to not cry at certain moments, but I wish that we would have spent this like 2 or 3 more minutes in those moments when they found out these tragic events. So one more thing I want to mention is not necessarily a major criticism, because I didn't know this to after watching the movie and doing some research. The movie, let's talk about missed opportunity. So for those that do not know, there is an entire other brother by the name of Chris who was completely removed from this film. Now, while I did a couple things researching, the only thing I was able to find was the director, Sean, said that they removed Chris because it was a timing thing. Like, they didn't have enough time to, I guess, like really explore that element and explore a whole person in their family. Again, it's not a negative thing because I didn't know about it to after the fact, but just thinking about it after the fact, I feel kind of weird that they didn't include a brother who was a part of their life, a part of their story, and also was a part of the tragedy. It feels weird. So let me know. Again, this isn't necessarily criticism. I just want to have a discussion point about this. How do you all feel about them removing, like, I can understand removing like a friend or a cousin who might have been close to them, but removing an actual person and a brother that was very integral to their tragedy and their family curse, that feels weird to me. But let me know how you all feel about that. But those are my main pros. Those are my main cons. Before I give you all my score and let you know if this film is worth checking out, I want to take the moment to thank you all for making it to this point in the review. If you haven't already, consider hitting the like button, sharing your thoughts in the comments, and also consider sharing this video. But also, if you enjoyed yourself, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on all my videos. With all that being said, overall, the Iron Claw hits its signature move by showcasing the emotionally devastating and tragic true story of the Von Erich family. The personal story is the foundation of the film, but as a kid who watched wrestling growing up, I absolutely love the recreation of the more iconic wrestling moments. This ensemble cast performances are absolutely outstanding, and I really thought that they complemented the lead performance by Zac Efron, who delivers the most physical and best dramatic performance to date. Now, while there were some shortcomings, I felt the director, Sean Durkin, successfully balanced the wrestling and the emotional elements of the story. And towards the end, there are 2 scenes that truly showed the strong bond between these brothers and what they had. They were incredibly moving and beautiful, and also brought me to tears. I'm going to give the Iron Claw a 4 out of 5. And I really recommend you all see this. Again, if you're a fan of wrestling, I think you're going to appreciate things. If you're not a fan, I think you're going to still appreciate the story. And I would be very curious to know what you all thought about, again, that last point I mentioned about removing a brother. For those that are familiar with it, how do you feel about that decision? But overall, pros, cons, favorite moments, favorite performance, what didn't work? Let's talk about that in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I thank you a lot. I hope you all enjoyed yourself. As you can see on the screen now, consider joining the community, checking out all of my reviews for all the big movies coming out at the end of the year. Also, check out my most latest review. You all are awesome. Hope you're staying safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.